What if I told you that TLC has been hiding one of the most shocking tell-alls in reality television history, a secret so explosive that it could completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about sister wives? Imagine discovering that the most uncomfortable and humiliating confession Kody Brown ever made about Christine was deliberately buried for years by the network, only to suddenly resurface when Christine began to tell her own side of the story in her book. What does this mean? Why now? And why has TLC stopped protecting Kody? From the very beginning, Sister Wives was sold to the public as a groundbreaking show that would pull back the curtain on the unique world of polygamy, but not the type of polygamy people whispered about behind closed doors. Not the world of arranged marriages and isolated compounds and women without voices. No, this was supposed to be about love, about choice, about a man who claimed he could balance his life and his heart between 4 women and build a family united by faith and respect. Yet as the seasons unfolded and as the cameras kept rolling, the cracks in the story became more and more impossible to ignore, because for all the talk about equality and spiritual love, what we often saw instead was Kody Brown saying things on camera that seemed to cut straight through the women he claimed to care for. And none more shocking than the infamous Nacho story, the very confession that TLC itself tried to bury for years. This moment did not play like a scene from a carefully managed reality show. It felt raw, uncomfortable, cruel, and it changed how many viewers would ever see Kody again. Because in this tell-all, Kody admitted on national television that he was never physically attracted to Christine, that the sight of her eating nachos was so unappealing to him that it made him question marrying her altogether. And when confronted about it years later in the episode that had mysteriously vanished, he doubled down and called his lack of attraction to Christine an understatement. Now think about that for a second. The entire premise of Sister Wives was built on the claim that these were relationships rooted in genuine connection and love, that this was a lifestyle. Misunderstood by outsiders, but inside it was supposed to be about partnership. And yet Kody himself admitted that with Christine, there was never any spark, never any real desire, never any genuine passion, only duty and obligation. This is not just a slip of the tongue. It is a confession that undermines the very foundation the show was built upon. So when TLC quietly made this episode disappear, fans were left to speculate. Was it a glitch? Was it intentional? Was it a way to protect Kody and the image of the Brown family, or was it simply too damaging for the brand? And now with Christine's book becoming public, with her reclaiming her voice and exposing her pain, suddenly this hidden episode returns, and suddenly TLC no longer seems interested in shielding Kody from the consequences of his own words and actions. The timing is suspicious and dramatic because by putting this episode back into circulation, they are essentially throwing Kody under the bus, showing the audience that yes, he really did say these things. Yes, this really did happen. And yes, Christine really did endure years of feeling unwanted and unloved because of it. And the ripple effect of that is massive, because it forces us to reconsider everything. We thought we knew about the family dynamics over the years. Remember? This was not just a private insult between a husband and wife. This was said on national television in front of Janelle, in front of Meri, in front of Christine herself, and the way the other wives reacted tells us more than any carefully edited storyline ever could. Janelle sitting next to Kody as he says these words looks at him with an odd smile, a smile that feels like a mix of disbelief, awkwardness, and maybe even a touch of relief, because for that moment she was not the one being demeaned. For that moment, the spotlight of Kody's insensitivity was shining on someone else. And Meri jumps in to defend Christine, trying to redirect, trying to soften the blow. While Christine sits there processing that the man she committed her life to just admitted he found her physically repulsive, the audience felt the gut punch, the women on stage felt the gut punch, and the network clearly realized that this was too ugly, too revealing, too destructive for the happy family narrative they were trying to sell, so they hid it. But now it is back, and its return changes everything, because it is not just about Kody being insensitive. It is about Kody showing the world that for him these marriages were not always about love or attraction or partnership, but about fulfilling a role, fulfilling an image, fulfilling the demands of a system that required him to have multiple wives, whether or not he truly wanted them, and the psychological toll of that is written all over Christine's book. She details how much of her energy was consumed by trying to be thin enough, pretty enough, worthy enough for a man who from the start admitted he did not desire her. And the tragedy is that even when she did lose weight, even when she changed her lifestyle, even when she tried to mold herself into something she thought Kody would finally value, it was never enough because Kody had already decided in his mind that she was not good enough, and nothing she did could rewrite that story. He had told himself and shared with the world. And this is why the nacho confession is so devastating. It is not about the nachos. It is not about the joke. It is about a husband admitting that he could not see his wife as attractive, and about a wife who spent decades punishing herself for never measuring up to a standard she was never meant to meet. And TLC knew how bad this looked. They knew how it would destroy the illusion of unity and love they had worked so hard to craft, so they made it vanish until now. And now the question becomes, why bring it back? Why allow this to resurface now? And the answer might be simple: because Kody no longer serves the narrative, because Christine's independence, her laughter, her freedom, her new life is the story they want to tell now, and to elevate her, they have to show just how much she endured and just how much Kody dismissed her. And in doing so, TLC is making it clear they are done protecting him. They are done shielding him from the fallout, and they are ready to let the world see who he really was when the cameras caught him off guard and the script fell away. When you watch that tell-all episode, the one TLC kept hidden for years, what strikes you is not only what Kody says, but how he says it, because there is no hesitation, no attempt to soften the blow, no awareness of the impact those words might have on Christine, or the other wives, or even the audience. He says it like it is a casual observation, like he is describing the weather. And in that casual delivery lies the most unsettling truth. Because when someone speaks so easily about being repulsed by their own partner, it tells you that this is not a passing thought. This is a belief that has lived inside him for years, and the wives' reactions only deepen the sense of dysfunction. Janelle, with that strange smile that almost looked like a shield, a way to protect herself from being pulled into the line of fire. Meri, with her instinctive defense of Christine as though she had rehearsed this role 1,000 times, standing up for one wife when the other was torn down, and Christine herself, caught between shock and humiliation, trying to process the fact that her husband just admitted on television that he never wanted her the way a husband should want a wife. And if you watch closely, you can almost feel the invisible competition playing out between the women. Because in a family where one man's approval determined so much, perhaps there was a twisted comfort in knowing that at least for that moment it was not you who was being diminished. Perhaps there was relief in knowing that the cruelty was directed elsewhere. And that is why this moment matters so much, because it peels back the layers of performance, the carefully constructed narrative about a family bound together by faith and choice, and instead reveals the reality of insecurity, rivalry, and deep emotional wounds. Christine's book, Becoming Sister Wives, does not shy away from these truths. She writes openly about her struggles with body image, with self-worth, with constantly feeling like she had to earn Kody's love, and the nacho confession explains why those insecurities cut so deep. Because when the man you marry announces to the world that he never found you attractive, that he was grossed out by the simplest act of you eating food, it plants a seed of doubt that can grow into years of self-loathing. And Christine herself admits that she poured enormous amounts of energy into trying to lose weight, into trying to reshape herself into something she thought Kody might finally appreciate. But no matter what she did, it was never enough, because his lack of attraction was not about her size or her eating nachos. It was about the fact that from the start, his heart was never invested in her the way it should have been, and yet she stayed. For years, because of her faith, because of her children, because of the commitments she had made. And that is what makes this entire situation feel so tragic. Because we are not just watching a marriage with ordinary problems. We are watching a woman fight to be loved by a man who publicly declared she was never enough, and the network knew the damage that this revelation could cause. They knew that if audiences saw the full scope of Kody's words, it would shatter the illusion of romance and harmony they were trying to market, and so they buried the episode. But here's the twist by bringing it back. Now TLC is not only exposing Kody, they are exposing their own strategy, their willingness to protect him when it suited them, and their willingness to throw him under the bus when the narrative shifts. And that revelation should make viewers pause. Because if they hid this, what else did they hide? What other moments of cruelty or dysfunction were cut from the story because they threatened the brand Christine herself, hinted that Kody and Robyn often rehearsed what they would say before filming, that they aligned their stories, that they shaped the narrative to suit the cameras. And in this tell, all Kody practically admits, as much when he insists that he was not memorizing a line when he made the nacho comment, that he was just being honest, and that slip reveals more than he realizes. It suggests that much of what we saw over the years was not raw reality but a performance, carefully managed to maintain the image of a functioning plural marriage. And the nacho confession was one of those rare unscripted moments when the mask slipped and the audience glimpsed the real dynamics underneath. And perhaps that is why TLC buried it, because it undermined the entire experiment. It revealed that love was not equally shared, that desire was not equally present, that the women were not equally valued, and in a system built on the promise of equality, that truth was too dangerous. But Christine's departure changed everything, because once she left, once she reclaimed her power, once she began to laugh again and tell her side of the story, the network no longer needed to hide his cruelty. In fact, exposing it only amplified her strength and validated her decision to walk away. And that is the dramatic turn we are witnessing right now. Because by re-releasing this moment, TLC is not just telling us who Kody was. They are telling us who Christine has become. She is no longer the wife humiliated on stage by her husband. She is the woman who endured it, survived it, and now thrives despite it. And that transformation is what audiences are rallying around, and what makes this story so compelling. And yet, there is still a lingering question: why now? Why, after so many years of hiding, the footage has TLC decided to put it back out into the world? Is it simply because Christine is releasing her book? Is it because Kody's reputation is already too damaged to salvage? Or is it because the network knows that audiences want the unfiltered truth, not the sanitized version they were fed for years? Perhaps it is all of those reasons. Perhaps the network has realized that authenticity, even when it is ugly, is more powerful than the polished illusion they once sold. Whatever the reason, the result is undeniable. The nacho confession is back. It is raw, it is painful, it is deeply revealing, and it forces us to confront the reality of Kody Brown. Not as the charismatic patriarch the show once tried to portray, but as a man whose own words betrayed the very image he was trying to uphold. The night deepens, and with it the weight of everything that has been left unsaid. Because if there is one truth about this story, it is that silence is never empty. Silence is heavy. Silence is suffocating. Silence is the space where secrets crawl and multiply. And in the world of sister wives, silence has always spoken louder than the words carefully placed in front of cameras. Every pause, every glance, every tightening of the jaw has carried meaning deeper than scripted confessions. And now, in the aftermath of revelations, the silence has become unbearable for the family and for the fans alike, because every unanswered question feels like a missing piece of a puzzle that might finally show the true picture of what this family has become. And the story turns darker when you realize that many of these silences were not accidents, they were choices. Deliberate shields against the eruption of truths that would have shattered the carefully built image of unity and faith. And when you examine the way the tell-all unfolded, it becomes clear that production itself walked a razor-thin line between revealing enough to keep the audience glued and holding back enough to protect the fragile remains of a family imploding under its own contradictions, because the truth is that reality television does not thrive on answers. It thrives on questions, and nowhere is that more evident than in the saga of Sister Wives, where every season gave just enough drama to spark debates online without ever fully pulling the curtain aside. And yet the tell-all shattered that rhythm, because this time the curtain slipped and the audience saw not just arguments, but raw wounds open and bleeding, the bitterness of betrayal, the devastation of rejection, the hollow despair of years sacrificed to a dream that was never real. And if you watched closely, you saw the cracks in the armor of each wife. Not just Christine, who made the bold choice to leave, but Janelle, who sat there with her, face a careful mask hiding the storm within a woman who has always carried herself with practicality and patience. Suddenly cornered by the possibility that the man she defended for decades never saw her as more than a backup, a placeholder in a narrative centered only on his desires. And then Meri, whose silence was the loudest of all. Because here is a woman who built the foundation of this family, only to watch herself erased from it, like a ghost walking through scenes where her presence was tolerated but never truly wanted. And finally Robyn, the so-called favorite, whose tears rang hollow for many because the weight of her privilege in this fractured family cannot be ignored. Yet even she seemed shaken by the force of truth that slipped out when Christine said the words that changed everything, that she had to leave to save herself, to reclaim her life, to remind the world that polygamy is not about faith or unity, but often about control and submission. And in that moment, fans were not just watching the end of a marriage, they were witnessing the unraveling of an entire belief system. And when you sit with that realization, it is haunting, because how many years were spent convincing viewers that this was love, that this was sacred, that this was somehow noble, when in reality what lay beneath was heartbreak, isolation, resentment, and a man who demanded loyalty without giving love. And so the tell-all became more than an interview. It became a trial, a reckoning. Not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion, where millions of viewers became the jury, dissecting every word, every flicker of emotion, demanding accountability where there had only been spin. And it is in this space between truth and performance that the suspense lingers, because what else has been hidden? What stories remain untold? Who else has suffered in silence while the cameras rolled and the paychecks flowed and the audience applauded what they thought was a family living differently, but still living with love? And that is why this tell-all will be remembered. Not for what was revealed, but for what it forced everyone to see, that the fairy tale was always fractured, that the dream was always fragile, that the cost of silence was too high, and now as the pieces scatter, fans are left to wonder whether there is any path to healing, or if the only way forward is to finally let the empire of sister wives collapse under the weight of its own lies. And when you think about the children, the next generation growing up in the shadow of this experiment, you feel the chill of what it means to inherit not just family drama, but the legacy of decisions made in the name of faith and obedience. And this is where the story refuses to end, because the suspense is not just about what has happened, but about what will come next when cameras return, when new contracts are signed, when the world demands another season, and the family must once again decide whether to play the part, or to finally walk away from the stage forever. And so the story circles back to the question that has haunted every corner of this family from the beginning: who really holds the power? Because if you strip away the smiling interviews and the carefully staged family dinners, what you find is a battlefield where love was promised but control was demanded, where loyalty was praised but individuality was punished, and the tell-all ripped that truth into the open, like a wound that will not close, because in every gesture, every sigh, every flash of anger from Kody, it became undeniable that this was not about partnership. It was about possession. And the wives, each in their own way, were both accomplices and victims of a system that told them sacrifice was holy, but in reality, sacrifice only served the man at the center, and you could see it in the way Christine's voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. The fury of a woman who had given decades of her life only to be told she was never enough. And her courage to walk away became the spark that illuminated everything that had been hidden for so long. And Janelle, watching her friend, sister, and fellow wife leave, was forced to confront that same truth: that stability without love is not stability at all. It is a slow erosion of the soul. And Meri, whose loyalty once seemed unbreakable, sat shrouded in silence, as if every word spoken around her was a reminder that her place had been erased long before the cameras caught it. And Robyn, the one who entered last but became first, sat weeping, not only from guilt or sympathy, but from the realization that the pedestal she was placed upon was built on the bones of everyone else's broken dreams. And in that moment, the tell-all became something greater than television. It became a confession booth, not just for the family, but for an entire audience who had once bought into the illusion, and now had to reckon with their own complicity in watching pain, dressed as faith, sold as entertainment. And the suspense deepens when you realize that even now, even with so many truths exposed, the full story has not been told. Because behind every cut to commercial, behind every edited scene, lies more darkness, more betrayal, more whispered secrets that could crumble what is left. And yet the question remains, will those truths ever see the light? Or will they be buried to protect contracts, reputations, and a franchise that still prints money for the network? And this is why the tension refuses to release, because audiences know they are still only seeing fragments. And fragments are dangerous because they ignite speculation. They create shadows where the imagination fills in horrors worse than reality. And in those shadows, fans debate online, dissecting body language, rewinding scenes, pulling apart timelines, desperate to find the missing pieces that the family will not give and that production will not show. And the tragedy is that while the world treats it as entertainment, for the people living it, this is real heartbreak, real disillusionment, real children growing up in a story that was never theirs to choose. And that is where the dread lies. Because what happens when the cameras finally go dark? Will the family splinter forever? Or will they cling to the stage because it is the only life they know? Will the next generation escape the cycle or repeat it? Because belief systems do not end with one man's fall. They echo through bloodlines. They linger in silence. They take root in unspoken lessons. And so the suspense of Sister Wives is not only about the past or the present, it is about the future, the terrifying uncertainty of whether healing is possible or whether the fractures have gone too deep. And as fans sit with the echoes of the tell, all they are left with the realization that the story is not over. It never was. Because as long as silence remains, as long as questions are unanswered, as long as wounds remain unhealed, the saga of Sister Wives will continue not just on television, but in the hearts of everyone who once believed in the dream, only to watch it shatter in slow motion before their eyes. In the end, the Sister Wives tell-all was never just about a family. It was about the collapse of an idea, an empire built on faith, love, sacrifice, and loyalty that cracked under the weight of its own contradictions. For years, the show asked audiences to believe in unity while quietly feeding them division, to celebrate sacrifice, while hiding the cost of suffering, to trust in a man whose love was never equal, whose loyalty was never shared. And when Christine finally shattered the silence, she shattered not only her own chains, but the illusion that held this family together for over a decade. Janelle standing at the crossroads, Meri fading into the background, Robyn clinging to a dream that feels more like a nightmare, and Kody caught in the ruins of a kingdom he thought would last forever. Each of them exposed, each of them vulnerable, and yet none of them offering the full truth. Because truth is dangerous, truth destroys contracts, truth ends franchises. And so the audience is left with fragments, half-truths, silences that scream louder than words. And it is in that silence that the suspense lingers. Because this story is not finished. It cannot be finished as long as there are secrets buried beneath the surface, as long as there are cameras waiting for another season, as long as there are children inheriting the legacy of choices they did not make. The final question is not whether Sister Wives can survive as a show, but whether this family can survive as people. And perhaps the most chilling realization of all is that we may never know, because in the world of Sister Wives, the silence has always spoken louder than the truth, and the silence is far from over.